in, hide! Don't come out till I tell you to!
Moses York opened his door to a dying woman and 2 freezing children during the worst blizzard Nevada had seen in 20 years. When dawn broke, a Black Hawk helicopter landed in his pasture. Federal agents surrounded his ranch with rifles raised, and he realized the mother he'd sheltered wasn't running from the storm. She was running from the Sinaloa cartel. And now 8 professional killers were 3 minutes out, coming to execute everyone on his property. Before we dive in, where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments right now. I love seeing our community spread across this great country, from the ranches of Montana to the heartland of Texas. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button, because every week we bring you stories of real American grit, courage, and the people who stand up when it matters most. Now, let's get into the story of Moses York, a man who thought he'd left war behind, until war found him on a frozen February night. The wind came first. Moses York felt it shift an hour before sunset, turning cold and mean out of the northwest. He'd been splitting wood behind the barn when the temperature dropped 15 degrees in as many minutes. The sky went from pale blue to the color of old iron. He knew what was coming. Nevada high desert didn't forgive a man who ignored the signs. By 9 o'clock, the blizzard hit like the wrath of God. Snow fell so thick, Moses couldn't see his own barn from the porch, 2 feet down already, maybe more. The wind screamed around the corners of his ranch house, rattling windows, seeking gaps in the wood. He sat by the fire with his rifle across his knees, listening to the storm tear at his world. Moses York had lived alone out here for 20 years. Liked it that way. No voices but his own. No troubles but the cattle and the fence line, and the well that sometimes ran slow in August. He'd chosen isolation the way some men choose religion, with total commitment and no apologies. Past midnight, when the storm was at its worst, someone pounded on his door, not knocked. Pounded, desperate, dying. Moses grabbed his rifle and moved to the door. Through the frosted window he could make out a shape. Small, hunched, barely standing. He threw the bolt and pulled the door open. The wind hit him like a fist, driving snow into his face, stealing his breath. A woman collapsed forward into his arms. She was young, mid-30s maybe, dark hair matted with ice, face white as death. She wore a thin jacket, jeans soaked through, no gloves. In her arms, wrapped in a blanket that had frozen stiff, a little girl, 5 years old, eyes wide with terror, lips blue. And against the woman's chest, barely visible, a baby. Maybe 18 months, not moving. "Please," the woman whispered. Her voice was nothing but frozen breath. "My children." Moses didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. He pulled all 3 of them inside and kicked the door shut against the storm. The woman's legs gave out. He caught her, took the baby from her arms, laid them both on the floor by the fire. The little girl clung to her mother, shaking so hard her teeth clattered. The baby wasn't breathing right, shallow, too slow. Moses stripped off the frozen blanket, rubbed the boy's chest, his arms, working heat back into the small body. The child gasped, coughed, started to cry. Good. Crying meant living. He pulled the woman and the girl closer to the fireplace, threw on more wood, grabbed every blanket he owned, wrapped them tight. The woman's eyes kept closing, hypothermia dragging her down. Moses made coffee, strong and black, and held the cup to her lips. "Drink," he ordered. She drank. 3 sips, then 4. Color started creeping back into her face. The little girl stared at him with enormous dark eyes. "Is Mateo okay?" Her voice was small, scared. "He's okay, darling," Moses said gently. "You all are. You're safe now." The woman looked at him then, really looked, and something in her expression made Moses's gut tighten. It wasn't gratitude. It was fear. Deep, bone-level terror that had nothing to do with the blizzard. She wasn't just running from the storm. She was running from something worse. "What's your name?" Moses asked quietly. "Charlotte." Her voice shook. "Charlotte Villalobos." She glanced at the windows, first one, then another, like she expected something to come crashing through the glass. Even with the storm howling outside, even half frozen and exhausted, she was watching, waiting. Moses felt the weight of it settle on him like snow on a roof. Whatever she was running from, it had followed her here. Moses heated the stew he'd made that afternoon, venison, potatoes, carrots from last summer's garden. Simple food, but hot. He ladled it into bowls and set them on the table. Charlotte sat with Emma pulled close, the little girl's face buried in her mother's shoulder. Baby Mateo had stopped crying, his breathing steadier now, wrapped tight in Moses's heaviest quilt. "Eat," Moses said. Not harsh, but firm. The kind of voice that didn't allow argument. Charlotte tried. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold the spoon. Moses cut bread, thick slices, and handed one to Emma. The girl took it with both hands and ate like she hadn't seen food in days. Maybe she hadn't. The wind hammered against the walls. Snow piled against the windows, blocking out the world. The fireplace roared, casting long shadows across the room. Moses watched Charlotte between bites. She'd look at her children, then at the windows, then back again. Her eyes never stopped moving, tracking every sound, every shift in the wind's pitch. "How long you been out there?" Moses asked quietly. "Since yesterday morning?" Her voice was barely audible. "We walked most of it. Car broke down near the highway." "In this storm? With 2 babies?" Moses kept his tone neutral, but the math didn't add up. Nobody walked 40 miles through a blizzard unless they were running from something worse than freezing to death. Charlotte didn't answer. She just stared into her bowl like it held answers she couldn't find. Moses didn't push. Wasn't his way. Man or woman needed help. You gave it. Questions came later, if they came at all. He'd lived by that code since he was old enough to understand what a code meant. Some things didn't need explaining. You either did right or you didn't. He cleared the table when they'd finished, ran water from the kitchen pump. The pipes hadn't frozen yet, but they would by morning. He'd need to drain them before dawn. Outside, the storm howled like something alive and angry. "You can have my bed," Moses said, nodding toward the bedroom. "It's warmer in there. I'll take the couch." Charlotte shook her head. "We can't. You've already done—" Wasn't asking. Moses's voice was quiet but absolute. "You need rest. Kids need a real bed. I've slept on worse than a couch." That was true enough. He'd slept in Afghan caves, Iraqi safe houses, places where the cold cut through your bones and the fear never let you rest. A couch in his own house was luxury by comparison. Charlotte looked at him for a long moment, and something in her face shifted. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it, or maybe just exhaustion too deep to fight anymore. "Thank you," she whispered. Moses helped her carry the children into the bedroom. Emma was already half asleep, her small body going limp with warmth and food. Mateo breathed deep and steady against his mother's chest. Moses pulled back the heavy quilts, the ones his grandmother had sewn 60 years ago, still holding heat like they held memories. Charlotte laid the children down together, tucked them close. Emma curled around her baby brother like a shield. Charlotte stood there watching them, her hand on Emma's hair, and Moses saw tears tracking down her face. Silent tears, the kind that came from fear, not relief. He backed out of the room, gave her privacy. Some grief wasn't meant to be witnessed. Moses settled on the couch, rifle within arm's reach, and listened to the storm. The fire crackled low. The wind found cracks in the walls and whispered through them. In the bedroom he heard Charlotte moving, checking the window. He'd bet money on it. Then the creak of bed springs as she lay down beside her children. But she didn't sleep. Moses could tell by the quality of the silence. She was awake, listening, same as him. Hours passed. The wind never stopped. Moses dozed in fits. Old soldier's sleep, never deep, always ready. Around 3 a.m, he heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Not the storm, something else. A vehicle. Distant, barely audible beneath the wind. But there. An engine straining through deep snow. Moses sat up slowly, reached for his rifle. In the bedroom, Charlotte was already awake. He heard her breathing change, quick, shallow, terrified. She'd heard it too, and she knew exactly what it meant. The storm broke just before dawn. Moses stepped onto his porch as pale light bled across the valley, turning the snow into something clean and brutal. 2 feet deep, maybe more. The world had gone silent. That particular quiet that comes after violence passes. He was halfway to the barn when he heard it. Thump, thump, thump. Helicopter rotors, deep, military, coming fast from the south. Moses stopped, hand moving instinctively toward the sidearm on his hip. In 20 years out here, he'd never seen military hardware over his land. Ranchers didn't warrant that kind of attention. The Black Hawk came over the ridge like a predator, no markings, matte black, rotors cutting the frozen air. It descended toward his south pasture, rotor wash, kicking up snow devils that spiraled into the morning light. Moses stood perfectly still, watching, calculating. The helicopter touched down 200 yards from his house. Doors slid open before the skids hit earth. Federal agents poured out, 6, maybe 8, tactical gear, body armor, rifles up. They moved in formation, professional, fast, not here to ask questions, here to take something. The lead agent broke from the group, a woman, 40s, hard-eyed, moving with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. She closed the distance to Moses in 30 seconds, hand near her sidearm but not on it. "Moses York?" Her voice cut through the cold like a blade. "That's right. Agent Reeves, Federal Witness Protection." She didn't slow down, didn't wait for acknowledgement. "We're here for Charlotte Villalobos and her children. Where are they?" Moses didn't move. "Inside. They're safe." "Not for long." Reeves's eyes swept his property, scanning windows, checking angles, reading terrain. "We need them now. Federal protective custody. Non-negotiable." Behind her, agents fanned out, surrounding the house. Professional. Thorough. Moses counted exits in his head, calculated fields of fire, old training rising up through 20 years of rust. "What's this about?" Moses kept his voice level. Reeves stepped closer, lowering her voice. She's a protected witness. Testified against the Sinaloa cartel 3 months ago. Was in a safe house in Reno until last night. She ran. Her handler's been compromised. We think the cartel found her location. Moses felt the weight of those words settle. Charlotte wasn't running from bad weather. She was running from killers. Professional ones. And now they know she's here, he said quietly. Reeves's jaw tightened. That's why we need to move. Now. The front door opened. Charlotte stood in the doorway, Emma clinging to her leg, baby Mateo in her arms. She saw the agents, and her face went white as the snow. No. Her voice shook but held firm. I'm not going with you. Reeves moved toward the porch. Ma'am, you don't have a choice. I do. Charlotte backed up a step, pulling Emma with her. My handler sold me out. How do I know you're not compromised too? How do I know you won't lead them right to us? Because I'm trying to save your life. That's what he said. Moses stepped between them. One step, deliberate, positioning himself as the obstacle. She stays here, he said quietly, until she feels safe. Reeves turned on him, eyes hard. This isn't a negotiation, Mr. York. That woman and her children are federal property. They're people. Moses's voice didn't rise, didn't need to. And they asked for shelter. I gave it. That's the end of the conversation. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. The agents held position, rifles ready but not aimed. Reeves stared at Moses like she was reading a map in a language she didn't quite understand. Then her radio crackled. A voice, urgent. Agent Reeves, we've got movement on the access road. Multiple vehicles coming fast. Reeves's face changed, calculation replacing authority. She looked at Moses. How many ways into this valley? One road, North Ridge Trail for horses. That's it. Defensible? Moses met her eyes. 20 years of isolation, and his training still answered first. If you know what you're doing. Reeves made a decision. She keyed her radio. Perimeter positions, thermal scans. I want eyes on that access road now. She turned back to Moses. You just bought yourself a war, Mr. York. Moses looked past her at the Black Hawk, at the agents spreading across his property, at Charlotte standing in his doorway with her children. Wouldn't be my first, he said. Reeves pulled Moses aside, away from Charlotte's hearing. Her breath came out in white clouds that hung in the frozen air between them. You need to understand what you're stepping into, she said, voice low and urgent. Charlotte Villalobos worked as an accountant for a cartel front company in Las Vegas. She discovered evidence, ledgers, transfers, names, trafficking routes, money laundering operations worth $200 million. She came to us 3 months ago, testified in federal court. Moses watched the agents spreading across his property, setting positions. And they want her dead. They want her erased. Reeves's expression was granite. The Sinaloa cartel doesn't forgive, doesn't forget. We put her in a safe house in Reno with her kids, round-the-clock protection, new identities ready to go. She paused. Yesterday, she called me, said her handler, Agent Briggs, was acting strange, making calls he didn't log, leaving at odd hours. So she ran, in a blizzard, with 2 babies, because she knew. Reeves's jaw tightened. We found Briggs this morning, dead in his apartment, $200,000 in cash under his mattress. He sold her location. words settled like snow on a grave. Moses looked back at his house. Charlotte stood in the doorway still, holding Emma's hand, Mateo against her chest. Her eyes tracked every agent, every movement. The look of a woman who'd learned trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. "She doesn't know if you're clean either," Moses said. "I know." Reeves's frustration was evident. "But we don't have time for her to figure it out. If the cartel knows she's here, and they do, or those vehicles wouldn't be coming. We've got maybe 30 minutes before this place becomes a kill zone." Moses studied the terrain with an eye he hadn't used in 2 decades. His ranch sat in a shallow valley, high ground to the north and east, open pasture to the south, one access road cutting through from the west. Defensible, if you had the right people. Exposed, if you didn't. "You flew in loud," he said quietly. "That Black Hawk announced your position to anyone within 10 miles. You load her on that bird now, they'll hit you before you're airborne. RPGs, 50 cal, whatever they brought. You'll go down in flames." Reeves's eyes narrowed. "And you know this how?" "Because that's what I do." Moses met her gaze. "Special Forces, 20 years retired. I know an ambush when I see one being set up." Something shifted in Reeves's expression. Reassessment, maybe respect. "So what do you suggest?" "My ranch has clear sight lines. One approach, high ground advantage if we use it right. We fortify here. Wait for your backup. Then we move her." He paused. "But we do it my way, on my land. Or you can take your chances in that helicopter and explain to her kids why their mama died in a ball of fire." Reeves was silent for a long moment. Behind her, an agent called out, "Thermal's picking up 3 vehicles, 5 miles out, closing fast." She keyed her radio. "All units, defensive positions. We're holding here." She looked at Moses. "If this goes sideways—" "It won't." Moses's voice carried the certainty of a man who'd made his choice. "Not on my watch." He walked back to the house. Charlotte hadn't moved, still standing in that doorway like she was guarding the entrance to something sacred, which Moses supposed she was. Her children, the only thing left worth protecting. "Charlotte," he said gently, "I need you and the kids in the storm cellar. It's reinforced concrete, safest place on the property." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Moses thought about that, about the code he'd lived by, about his wife and the child he'd lost before either took a breath, about the long years alone in this valley, thinking isolation was the same as peace. "You came to my door asking for help," he said simply. "That's all I need to know." Charlotte's hand found his arm, squeezed once. Then she turned and carried her children inside. Moses loaded his rifle with the smooth efficiency of muscle memory that never forgot. Reeves stood beside him, scanning the horizon. "Those vehicles will be here in 10 minutes. Then we'd best get ready." The morning sun climbed higher, turning the snow into blinding white. Beautiful and terrible. The land Moses had chosen for peace was about to become a battlefield. And somewhere out on that access road, men were coming to kill a woman and her children. They'd have to go through Moses York first. Moses led Charlotte through the kitchen to the back door. The storm cellar was 50 feet behind the house. Built during the Cold War by the previous owner, reinforced concrete sunk 8 feet into the Nevada hardpan. Moses had stocked it years ago out of habit. Old soldiers prepared for wars they hoped would never come. Emma clung to her mother's coat. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe, baby." Charlotte's voice shook, but she kept moving. Moses pulled open the heavy steel door. Steps led down into darkness. He flicked on the light, a single bulb illuminating canned goods, water jugs, blankets, a first aid kit. Cold down here, but protected. Walls 2 feet thick. Nothing short of artillery would breach it. "How long?" Charlotte asked. "Until it's safe." Moses handed her a flashlight, extra batteries. "Don't come out until I come get you. Don't open this door for anyone else. Understood?" Charlotte looked at him with those terrified eyes. "You're staying up there?" "Yes, ma'am." "You could leave. Take your truck, get out before they arrive. This isn't your fight." Moses thought about that. About the easy choice, the safe choice. The choice he'd made 20 years ago when he'd walked away from war and buried himself in this valley. "It became my fight the moment you knocked on my door," he said. He climbed back up, sealed the door behind them. The lock was solid, the kind that wouldn't give without serious effort. Charlotte and her children were as safe as he could make them. Above ground, Reeves had her people moving fast. 2 agents on the barn roof with scoped rifles. 2 more behind the water trough. Good cover, clear firing lanes. The Black Hawk pilot stayed with his bird, engine idling, ready for emergency evac if things went completely sideways. Moses grabbed his hunting rifle from the house. .308 Winchester. Scope he'd zeroed himself, familiar weight in his hands. He moved to the fence line on the north side, where he had elevation and line of sight down the access road. Reeves joined him, carrying an M4. "Your storm cellar really that secure?" "Built to survive a nuclear strike. It'll hold." "Good." She scanned the valley with binoculars. "Thermals show 3 vehicles, 8 heat signatures total, professional spacing, military discipline." "Cartel sicarios." Moses checked his rifle. "They'll probe first. Test our response. Look for weak points. You've done this before. Different country. Same principles." Moses settled into position, his body remembering the weight of waiting. "They'll try to flank, split our attention. We hold center, keep them at distance, don't let them get close to the house." Reeves keyed her radio. "All units, contact in 5 minutes. Hold fire until my command. I want positive target identification." The sun climbed higher, the snow reflected light like a mirror, making everything too bright, too exposed. Moses's breath came steady and slow. His hands didn't shake. 20 years disappeared, and he was back, in places where men hunted men, and the only law was the one you carried. An agent called out, "Visual contact, 3 SUVs black. Coming up the access road, speed 30 miles per hour. Moses found them in his scope. Suburban assault vehicles, windows tinted, reinforced frames, not trying to hide, announcing their presence. Confident. They stopped a quarter-mile out. Doors opened. Men emerged. 8 of them, just like the thermals showed. Body armor, automatic weapons, moving with tactical precision, spreading into assault formation. No hesitation, no negotiation. They were here to kill. Reeves's voice came through Moses's earpiece, calm and cold. "All units, weapons hot. Fire on my command." Moses centered his crosshairs on the lead man. Tall, moving with authority, probably the unit commander. He felt the familiar weight of the decision. The moment before violence became inevitable. The sicarios advanced across the snow. 200 yards. 150. Moses's finger rested on the trigger. Reeves's voice. "Contact in 3, 2. The lead sicario raised his rifle. "Fire!" Moses's first shot punched through the lead sicario's chest. The man dropped into the snow, red blooming against white. The valley erupted. Automatic weapons fire tore across the pasture, sharp cracks echoing off the ridges, bullets snapping through frozen air. Federal agents returned fire from their positions. The barn roof agents dropped 2 more sicarios in quick succession. Professional shooting. Clean. But the cartel soldiers were professionals too. They scattered, using the SUVs for cover, laying down suppressing fire that forced Moses to duck behind the fence post. Splinters exploded above his head. He counted muzzle flashes, 5 still active. They were advancing by fire teams, one group shooting while the other moved. Textbook tactics. Moses shifted position, came up 20 feet to the left, found a target. Squeezed. Another sicario went down. 4 left. The smell of gunpowder mixed with the clean scent of snow. Smoke drifted across the white expanse like ghosts. "They're flanking east," Reeves's voice cut through the chaos. Moses swung his scope right. 2 sicarios breaking from cover, moving fast toward the barn through a shallow depression in the land. Smart, using terrain. They'd studied the approach, knew the weak points. The barn agents engaged, but the angle was wrong. The sicarios kept coming. Moses tracked the lead runner, exhaled, fired. The man tumbled forward into the snow and didn't move. His partner dove behind Moses's woodpile, 40 yards from the house. Too close, way too close. The sicario had a clear shot at the kitchen window, at the path to the storm cellar. Moses pulled his sidearm, moved low and fast along the fence line. His knees protested, not 20 anymore, but muscle memory carried him, cover to cover, professional, controlled. The sicario popped up, rifle swinging toward Moses. Moses fired 3 times, center mass. The man dropped. 3 left. Then Moses heard it. The whine of an engine redlining. One of the SUVs lurched forward, accelerating hard, smashing through the split-rail fence at the property's edge. Ramming attack, heading straight for the house. "Vehicle! Vehicle!" an agent shouted. Concentrated fire raked the SUV, bullets punching through the windshield, shattering glass, shredding metal. But it kept coming. Driver either dead or committed. 2,000 pounds of steel and momentum aimed like a missile at Moses's front porch. Reeves stood from cover, M4 up, walking fire across the vehicle's engine block. Steam exploded from the hood. The SUV swerved, lost traction in the snow, slewed sideways, and crashed into Moses's barn. The impact shook the ground. Wood splintered. Dust and snow billowed into the morning air. The 2 agents on the barn roof scrambled back as the structure groaned, threatening to collapse. Silence fell. Sudden, complete. Moses scanned for movement. His breath came hard now, adrenaline burning through his system. He counted bodies in the snow. 6. 2 more had to be. Gunfire erupted from the wrecked SUV. A sicario emerged from the passenger side, weapon up, firing wild. An agent behind the water trough took a round to the shoulder, went down screaming. Moses dropped the shooter with 2 quick shots. 7. Where was number 8? Reeves was thinking the same thing. Anyone got eyes on the last hostile? Static. Negative responses from all positions. Then Moses saw it. Fresh tracks in the snow, leading away from the battle, circling wide toward the back of the property. Toward the storm cellar. His blood went cold. The 8th sicario wasn't trying to fight them. He was going for Charlotte and the children. Moses ran. Moses sprinted through snow that grabbed at his boots, rifle up, scanning. The tracks led around the back of his property, deliberate, calculated. The sicario had planned this from the start. Let his team draw attention while he went for the real target. 50 feet from the storm cellar, Moses saw him. The man crouched beside the steel door, working something in his hands. C4. Enough to blow the lock clean off, maybe crack the concrete. Enough to kill everyone inside if the blast wave hit right. Moses didn't shout a warning, didn't give the man a chance to detonate early. He fired. The round caught the Sicario in the side, spinning him away from the door. The explosive charge tumbled into the snow. The man rolled, came up with a pistol, fast and smooth despite the wound. They fired simultaneously. Moses felt the bullet tear past his ribs, white-hot pain that nearly dropped him. He kept his feet, kept firing. 2 more rounds. 3. The Sicario went down hard and stayed down. Moses stumbled to the C4, grabbed it with shaking hands, threw it as far as he could toward the open pasture. It detonated mid-air, a crack of thunder that shook the world, snow and dirt geysering into the sky. His knees hit the ground. Blood soaked his shirt, hot against the cold. The wound burned like fire. He pressed his hand against it, felt the sticky warmth pulsing between his fingers. Behind him, footsteps crunching through snow. Reeves appeared, her left arm hanging useless, blood dripping from her shoulder wound. "Moses, I'm fine." He wasn't. "Get that door open, get them out." Reeves moved to the storm cellar, banged on the steel. "Charlotte, it's Agent Reeves, you're safe." The door opened slowly. Charlotte emerged first, eyes wild, scanning for threats. She saw Moses on the ground, bleeding, and her face crumpled. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," Moses said again, forcing himself to stand. The world tilted, steadied. Emma and Mateo were crying in the cellar entrance. Alive. Safe. That was what mattered. The sound of helicopter rotors cut through the morning air. Moses looked up, expecting more cartel reinforcements, already reaching for his rifle. But these were marked. 2 Blackhawks, federal insignia, coming in fast from the north. Backup. Finally. Reeves keyed her radio with her good hand. "Command, this is Reeves. Hostiles neutralized. We have casualties. Need immediate medevac." The helicopters touched down in Moses' south pasture, sending up clouds of snow. Armed agents poured out, securing the perimeter, checking bodies, taking control of the scene. Moses watched them work with the detached focus of a man who'd lost too much blood. His ranch looked like a war zone. Barn collapsed, fence shattered, snow stained red in a dozen places. The peace he'd built for 20 years, gone in 20 minutes. But Charlotte and her children were alive. That was the only math that mattered. A medic ran to Moses, started packing his wound. "Sir, we need to get you on a bird." "Her first." Moses nodded toward Charlotte. "And the kids. Get them out of here." Reeves stood beside him, her own wound being tended. "You saved her life, Moses. Saved all of us." Moses looked at the bodies scattered across his property. 8 men dead, an agent wounded, his home destroyed, the cost of doing right. "Just did what needed doing," he said quietly. Charlotte approached, Emma clinging to her leg, Mateo in her arms. Tears tracked through the dirt on her face. "I don't know how to thank you." Moses thought about his wife, the child he'd lost, the 20 years he'd spent alone, thinking isolation was the same as healing. Maybe it had been. Maybe he'd needed this empty valley to remember who he used to be, to remember why he'd fought in the first place. "Don't need thanks," Moses said. "Just need you safe." Reeves's radio crackled. "Agent Reeves? We've got a situation. 3 more vehicles spotted on Highway 95 heading this way. Cartel reinforcements. ETA 15 minutes. Reeves's face went hard. "They sent a second wave." Moses felt the weight of it. They'd won the battle, but the war wasn't over. "Get her on that helicopter," Moses said. "Now." Agents moved fast, hustling Charlotte and the children toward the waiting helicopter. Emma was crying, looking back at Moses. Mateo buried his face in his mother's shoulder. Charlotte's eyes met Moses's, gratitude and terror mixed together. "Go," Moses said. "Don't look back." But before they reached the Black Hawk, gunfire erupted from the access road. The second wave had arrived early. 3 more SUVs came roaring up the valley, engines screaming, men leaning out windows with rifles. They'd learned from the first assault. No slow approach, no tactics, just speed and overwhelming violence. "Get her airborne!" Reeves shouted. "Now!" The helicopter's rotors spun up to full pitch. Agents returned fire, but the SUVs were moving too fast, zigzagging, using speed as armor. One veered toward the helicopter, trying to cut off the escape route. Moses saw it happening in slow motion. Charlotte and the children 10 feet from safety, the SUV bearing down. If it reached them, if it opened up with automatic weapons at that range, no time to think, only time to act. Moses ran toward the nearest fallen agent, dropped to his knees beside the body. The man's tactical vest held grenades, standard issue, M67 fragmentation. Moses grabbed one, pulled the pin with his teeth, old habits rising through the pain and blood loss. "Moses, no!" Reeves's voice, distant, unimportant. He sprinted toward the lead SUV. His wound screamed, blood soaked through the field dressing. The world narrowed to a single point. The vehicle, the grenade, the throw that had to be perfect. Gunfire tore up the snow around him. Bullets snapped past his head. One caught his left arm, spinning him sideways. He kept moving. 30 feet, 20. The SUV's driver saw him, swerved to run him down. Moses dove, sliding beneath the undercarriage on his side, momentum carrying him through. He released the grenade as he passed beneath, rolled it up against the gas tank, kept sliding, came out the other side. 4 seconds. Moses scrambled to his feet, ran toward the nearest cover, the water trough, 20 feet away. His legs barely held him. The wound in his side pulsed with every heartbeat. 3 seconds. The Sicarios realized what he'd done. Doors flew open. Men bailed out, running from the vehicle. 2 seconds. Moses dove behind the water trough, covered his head. The explosion lifted the SUV off the ground, flipped it end over end. The gas tank went up like a secondary bomb. Orange fire rolling into the blue sky, heat washing across the snow. Flaming debris rained down. The concussion hit Moses like a physical blow, rattling his teeth, stealing his breath. The other 2 SUVs skidded to stops. Sicarios poured out, but their formation was broken, their momentum shattered. They'd expected easy targets. Instead, they found a killing field. Federal agents opened up with everything they had, disciplined fire from multiple angles. The cartel soldiers tried to regroup, but they were caught in the open, exposed, outgunned, and then the cavalry arrived. 2 more Black Hawks appeared over the ridge. Gunships this time, miniguns mounted in the doors. They came in low and fast, the sound of their rotors like the voice of God passing judgment. The miniguns opened up, 6,000 rounds per minute. The snow around the remaining SUVs erupted in geysers of white and red. The vehicles disintegrated under the onslaught, armor shredding like paper. The surviving Sicarios broke, threw down weapons, ran for the hills. It was over. Moses lay behind the water trough, staring at the sky. His hearing was gone, replaced by a high-pitched whine. Blood pooled beneath him, melting the snow. He couldn't feel his legs anymore. A shadow fell across him. Reeves, kneeling, her mouth moving. He couldn't hear the words, but he read her lips. "Stay with me." Then Charlotte was there, Emma beside her, both of them crying. Charlotte's hand found his, squeezed hard. "You saved us," she said. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe he just imagined it. Moses looked at Emma's tear-streaked face, at baby Mateo, safe in his mother's arms, at the helicopter waiting to carry them to safety. Worth it, he thought. All of it. Worth it. The sky above was clear and blue, beautiful, cold. The kind of sky that promised winter would end eventually, that spring would come, that life would go on. Moses York closed his eyes. Moses woke in a hospital bed 3 days later. White walls, antiseptic smell, the steady beep of monitors tracking a heartbeat that had no business still beating. Reeves sat in the chair beside him, arm in a sling. "Welcome back." "Charlotte?" His voice came out rough as gravel. "Safe. New identity, new location, federal protection that's actually clean this time." Reeves leaned forward. "She wouldn't leave until the doctors said you'd make it." Moses processed that. "The cartel? 12 dead on your property, 8 more arrested at the roadblock, the rest scattered. FBI rounded up the leadership in Vegas yesterday morning. It's over, Moses. Really over." Over. The word felt strange. Final. 2 weeks later, Moses stood on the porch of a safe house in Montana. His ranch was gone, burned by the feds to erase any trace of Charlotte's presence. Insurance would cover it. Eventually. The door opened. Charlotte stepped out, Emma and Mateo behind her. The little girl ran to Moses, wrapped her arms around his legs. "You came," Charlotte said softly. "Promised I would. Until you're settled." Charlotte reached into her pocket, pulled out something small. His grandmother's silver compass. He'd given it to Emma in the helicopter to keep her calm during the flight. "She wants you to have it back," Charlotte said. Moses knelt, looked Emma in the eyes. "You keep it, darling, so you always know which way is home." Emma clutched the compass to her chest. Charlotte's hand found Moses's shoulder. "What will you do? After?" Moses looked at the mountains rising beyond the safe house, at the woman and children he'd chosen to protect, at the life he'd lost, and the purpose he'd found. "Build something new," he said. "But this time, I won't build it alone." 3 months later, Moses York stood on the porch of a new ranch, smaller than the old one, but solid. Charlotte sat beside him, watching Emma teach Mateo to feed the chickens. The children's laughter carried on the evening breeze. The woman who'd collapsed freezing on his doorstep now called him family. The man who'd chosen isolation had chosen connection instead. Some men build walls to keep the world out. A good man opens his door when someone knocks and defends what matters when the wolves come calling. If you believe that true courage means standing between danger and the defenseless, even when it costs you everything, like and share this story. Subscribe now for more stories of American protectors who choose honor over safety. Also, check out the 2 videos showing on the screen right now, specially crafted for you.